Hi, Rachel. Where is everybody else?
Sir, we ran a little over in the other class. Everybody should be joining soon.
Okay, all right. All right, evening everybody. I'm going to start. I want you to watch this clipping and just define these terms to me. What is a business? What is an international business? And yeah, let's start there because we don't want to. No, this is not what I want. Share screen, share sound. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so remember what is an international business and examples of international businesses. No, what is a business first? What is an international business and examples of international businesses? I found this clipping and it's very telling. And then we get more into granular details, all right?
Of a domestic business or traditional business model. We're going to take a look at, well, we're going to really try and define what we mean by international business. And to do so, we're going to really try and differentiate from the idea of a domestic business or traditional business model. We're going to take a look at examples of these various international business activities and really have a firm grasp on international business going forward. So first off though, let's really identify what we mean by business. I know many of you understand what this concept is. Many of you engage in business activities every single day, but really let's define it and make sure everyone's on the same page. So a business, we often call it an enterprise or a firm. It's whenever an organization of some sort engages in a trade of goods or services or both to consumers. To really make it simple, think about your own lemonade stand that you had when you were a 6-year-old, right? That was a business. You were operating a business. You sold lemonade, which was a good, to prospective customers, and they would in turn provide you with some sort of currency, something of value, most likely money. Many of you probably tried selling lemonade at $10 a pop and failed at operating your own business. But whether or not you failed, you still engaged in a business. And most businesses engage in what you tried, profit, right? Most businesses try and acquire profit, and so they sell their goods or services above what it costs them to produce. However, many businesses also operate as non-profit entities, and therefore they sell their goods or services at a level that just covers the costs of operating their business. So whether or not you engage in business such as Walmart or you are Goodwill, you are both businesses. So what makes a business an international business? Well, it's very, very simple. As soon as a business, an organization, engages in business activity across regions or country or political borders, they all of a sudden have become an international business. Many private and governmental businesses are international. Any sales business, international. They'll sell their goods across borders. Investments take place over borders, right? Logistics, traveling or getting goods and services and resources to and from businesses, again, across borders. And transportation, again, often takes the form traveling across borders. And so as soon as that happens, businesses all of a sudden become international businesses. Very, very simple. So let's take a look at it from another perspective and really differentiate it from a domestic business. The traditional business model was domestic businesses. These were businesses that operated within a country's borders. For Canada, we saw domestic businesses thrive over the last hundred, I should say, years. Right? These businesses sold their goods and services to Canadian customers. They would purchase their resources from other Canadian companies that operated within the country's borders. Right? And they would make investments to various organizations within the country's borders as well. So these were domestic businesses, and therefore they operated in a domestic market. So how does a business become an international business? Well, as mentioned, as soon as that money, as soon as that transaction takes place across a country's borders, well, all of a sudden it becomes an international business. So if a Canadian retailer starts selling their goods and services to, I don't know, someone in Australia, then it's an international business. As soon as a Canadian company purchases resources from, let's say, a company in Russia, then it's an international business. Or if a company in Canada invests in a business, let's say in Brazil, again, it becomes an international business. So what makes a business an international business? Well, here are some examples. Imagine a Canadian retailer opens a store in another country. Or maybe a U.S. retailer, I don't know, Le Target, let's say, opens a store in Canada. It's a international business. What if a business operates a manufacturing plant overseas? I mean, many Canadian companies do this and operate manufacturing plants oftentimes in places like China. What if you export your products to foreign countries? Right? That's an international business. Or import products from a foreign business. I mean, look in your wardrobe. How many of you have t-shirts or jeans made in Canada? I would say probably, I don't know, 0. That's how many of you would probably have jeans or t-shirts made in Canada, right? You've engaged in international business, or have purchased from a business, I should say, that is an international business. And the last one, investing. Many businesses invest in other businesses, in other organizations, right? And these investments travel across borders and therefore become international businesses. Well, that brings us to our end of the lesson.
All right, so talk to me some of the things that stood out. What is an international business? Let's start with the simplest definition. What is an international business? Hello?
Yes, sir. International business, you say?
Yes.
All right, so that's say basically is a business that deals with trade of goods and services across national borders.
Right, perfect. And can you think of any example of that? Any,
Yeah,
whether it
man.
be local, regional? Go ahead.
Microsoft.
So Microsoft, where do we have Microsoft in Jamaica? Do they operate in Jamaica, or do they sell products in Jamaica?
I guess so. I'm not sure. I have to Google that, sir.
So don't you buy Microsoft? Don't you buy Microsoft products in Jamaica?
Yeah, true, you know, sir. Windows and them thing there. I just
Yeah.
we ask the question. We forgot
Yes.
it now to be a physical store. Can be
Right.
online.
It can be online. Exactly.
Right.
Right. Yes. So in other words, that's actually one of the reasons why international businesses, or the concept of international business operations, have grown, because of the use of technology to kind of lower or remove physical borders.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So this is just showing you an Malaysia annual trade over time, and it is showing you imports and exports. In other words, there are companies that are operating in and out of this particular country. And again, anybody knows what FDI means? Anybody knows what FDI means? FDI? Anybody want to take a guess? FDI, what it means? It means, okay. So it means
foreign direct investment.
Yes, a foreign direct investment. All right. And if you're looking at this particular chart, you're seeing, for example, in developed countries, we're seeing developed countries, right? So so FDI inflows, in other words, the level of foreign direct investments in these particular countries, and we notice that these are the other countries. There's a lot of inflow and there's a lot of outflow. Anybody wants to take a guess? What does this mean in the context of international trade in terms of the dollar value, billions of dollars? What are we seeing happening in developed countries versus developing countries?
Like for them wanna go up.
Right? Why are we not talking? I'm hearing one person. What's happening with the other persons? Not that I want you to stop talking, sir. But we're going to get into a discussion, and you'll find, for example, that in Caribbean countries, you find sometimes that there's a lot of foreign direct investment. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. We're going to look at the pros and cons of that. So what is international business? It consists of transactions that are devised and carried out across national borders, as was earlier said, to satisfy the objectives of individuals, companies, and organizations. And all commercial transactions between two or more countries are considered to be a part of international business, whether it be private, public, and this is just showing you that in this year, and I'm sure it's probably more now, that over 6.2 trillion US dollar worth of goods and services cross border each year. And international business adds significant influence to typical domestic operations. And what this really means is that when an international business enters a country, there are several things that might happen to domestic competitors. It could be that they run them out of business. It could be that they increase competition and cause the local businesses to become better at what they do. It could be that the international business buys a local company or buys out a local company. It could be that, for example, there's something called gentrification, where companies might go into an area, increase the property value, and then ordinary persons can no longer afford to live in those areas. So we're going to look at some of those particular things. Why do you think there is a need for international business? Or is there a need for international business? Is there a need for international business?
Yes, sir.
Why do you say that?
Because it's not everything that we need we have. That I want to mean.
Who are the we? Who are the we?
Jamaica, I guess.
All right. So not everything that are needed by Jamaicans. So I want you to talk from the third person, academic writing. They can't talk say we, because I'm going to mark it only if you write that on a paper. So I'm very serious, sir. Very serious. You have to talk from the third person. So yeah, so not everything that are needed by Jamaicans are available in Jamaica. Can you give me an example of things that we might need but we don't have, or things that we might want but we don't have?
Oil.
Oil, right? So we need oil. Anything else? Other persons in the class? It'd be good if you could talk to.
Vehicles, sir. We don't manufacture vehicles.
Right, vehicles. So there are so many things that we don't manufacture that we need, right? And as a result, we international businesses have to come in and invest and operate. So more and more firms around the world are going global, including manufacturing firms, service companies. Can you tell me of an international bank that operates in Jamaica?
Scotia.
Right, Scotia is one, right? And it actually does very good business in Jamaica. So need for international business, one, it causes the flow of ideas, services, and capital across the world. Yes, capital is important, bringing about certain levels of investment, offers consumers new choices. Yes, trust me, we need different choices. Permits the acquisition of a wider variety of products, so people can pick, choose, and refuse. Facilitates the mobility of labor. Persons can move across the world to work. Mobility of capital, money can move all over, and also technology, because there are certain technologies that are available elsewhere that are not in Jamaica. One thing that I think that should be in Jamaica that we don't have is a subway system, not a train system though, a subway system, a high-tech subway system that exists, for example, in Canada or in the US. Because if that were the case, if they had a very good subway system, if I choose to live in Jamaica, I would actually live in Portland and just jump on the subway, go to Portland, and come into and work in Kingston. So that's something that I think we need. Provides challenging employment opportunities. So it could be that some persons are going to lose their jobs, and it could be that some persons are going to get jobs. It could be that certain jobs are going to create it for local persons. It depends on how you're looking at it. And it reallocates resources, makes preferential choices, and shifts activities to a global level. In other words, also to international businesses now sometimes lead to multinational or bilateral agreements between countries, or even between a company and a country. And I'm sure you're hearing the big debate about Uber operating in Jamaica. What's your thought about Uber operating in Jamaica? What are your thoughts? Because that would be an international business operating in Jamaica. Any thoughts on Uber operating in Jamaica?
It's a good thing, you know, sir, but it might, I don't even know. For the regular taxi people, they might be not think so. They might not think so.
Okay. Anybody else? What's happening with the other persons?
So I think it's unfortunate that we allow a foreign country or some foreign investors to come and develop something like this when we could have done it. We have the resources to do this.
Then what, but why didn't we do it if we have the resources? Why didn't we?
That's why I say it is unfortunate.
But how is it unfortunate? Because Uber always existed. It existed. The model of Uber existed all over the long time ago, and we could have adopted the model, and we didn't. And I'm deliberately playing the devil's advocate because I think Jamaica needs a Uber system, but I think they need the model that exists outside of Jamaica, where you don't pay the taxi, you don't pay the driver, you pay Uber. So there's no transaction, there's no financial transaction between you and the driver. I like that model because it means therefore that there's less likely for me to be robbed because the driver, I'm going to say to the driver, I don't have any money. And of course, we know that too, that our local taximen are not the best customer service representative. Some of them are very out of order, very rude. They play all kinds of music in your ears. They will tell you all kinds of words. So I think Uber is actually a very, very good thing. That's just my personal view. And it might force the local taxi operators to clean up their act. If you look at some of the accidents on the roads, taxis are always involved. If you look at some of the kinds of driving that we consider to be illegal or threatening, taxis are oftentimes involved. So I'm not sure that it's a bad thing. I'm not convinced that it's a bad thing. And the minister himself is playing as if he doesn't know that Uber is here, kind of dancing around the issue as if he did not have to give them permission to operate in Jamaica. This is, let me just see, international business questions. So how will an idea, good or service fit into international market? And these are things that usually you ask yourself or a company asks itself when it's going to, or if it intends to expand into a different international market. So how will my service fit into that particular market? Should trade or investment be used to enter a foreign market? Should supplies be obtained domestically or abroad? So let us say KFC. Do you think KFC should use locally produced chicken or should they import the chicken that we use for KFC? What are your thoughts?
As long as we can supply, as long as we can supply it locally, I think we should use local market.
Right. I fully agree with you. And I'm almost sure they actually do use locally produced chicken. This is why KFC chicken in Jamaica is actually so revered around the world. People love Jamaican KFC chicken. But sometimes too, you find that the local producers are very expensive or very exploitative. So they say, okay, it's an international company, it means that I'm going to double the price, not realizing that the international company might be able to get that same thing elsewhere much cheaper or might import it much cheaper. Do you think that what product adjustments are necessary to be responsive to local conditions? And when you're talking about product adjustments, it's the same thing with like KFC. If it is that you're going to sell KFC to Jamaicans, it can't taste like how it's sold to, it cannot have the same taste like KFC that is produced in the US or in Canada. And I give you the example, when I was living in Florida years ago, 2006, I went there for the work and travel. I was there for almost 4 months. The first time I went to KFC and I ordered and I saw where the man chopped the chicken, I saw blood. And I said, okay, no more KFC for me. And from that time until now, it's very difficult for me to eat KFC chicken because I'm always seeing that blood. You notice that KFC chicken in Jamaica they don't do it rare. There's no blood because they have to we are different people and they have to make quote unquote product adjustments. And what are the threats from global competitors and how can these threats be counteracted? Yes, you have to look at global competitors depending on the market that you're in. If you're in the same market for selling shoes, you might not want to come to Jamaica or want to come to any part of the region where a particular competitor is doing very well. Do you remember a company, an international business that came to Jamaica, entered in the telecommunication sector and then later left? Anybody remembers that company?
Clara, I thought so.
Yes, it's Clara. And why did Clara leave? Anybody remembers the reason or the rationale that was given for Clara leaving Jamaica?
I think it did have something to do with Digicel, you know.
Yes, and what exactly about Digicel?
Can't really remember, sir. I think them did. No, say Digicel did make them leave.
There was an agreement between the two companies.
Agreement. Yeah,
right.
Agreement.
So you control this market, and I'm going to go to, I think it was a Latin American market where Clara controls that market. So it's like there was a kind of agreement to say, okay, let's not interfere in each other's market.
Yeah, because okay, I understood.
Yes, yes. So if you're an international business, you also have to look at the global competitors, all right? Because at the end of the day, you're there to make profit. All right, so why engage in international business? Expand sales, because if you're an international business, you want to sell more, right? And in Jamaica, we know that Jamaicans love gadgets. So iPhone, well, give me some of the international products that are sold in Jamaica that Jamaicans can't live without or they love them dearly.
Clocks.
Clocks, yes, iPhone. All clocks. I'm not buying no clocks, you know, goddamn 14,000 and 15,000. You must be crazy. Absolute madness. So we have Clarks, we have iPhone. Anything else?
Luxury car, them say.
Yeah. What are some of the luxury cars that we love?
Bima, them, the Porsche, all of them.
But we also love Toyota too, you know. Toyota is not
Toyota.
It's not the high end, but you know, the middle class and the lower class people them can drive the one little car too.
Definitely, sir.
So Toyota caters to that segment of the market, yes.
Yeah.
All right, and it says acquire resources, meaning better component services or products. In other words, there are some international businesses that are able to produce the same product at a higher quality or at mass volume for much at a cheaper price. Do you remember when televisions were very expensive? They were very expensive to have a television in your house. All right, you guys are probably too young, but I remember a time when televisions were limited in Jamaican households where I grew up in Tivoli where the neighbor would put out the TV on the road and the VHS on the road and everybody sits around it and watch like a favorite karate show because TVs were very limited or we call them video recorders were very limited. Anybody remembers that time? You guys are too young probably. Let me see if any old people in the class. Anybody had that experience while growing up, I should say? Don't tell me I'm the only old person in the class.
In the country.
Oh, in the country, right. In the country, right. So I had that experience because television was something that was very expensive. And two, even having a VHS was even more expensive. But what has happened because of international business and because of globalization, which we're going to get into eventually, China, for example, is able to mass produce these things at a much cheaper rate. So TV, no, it's not so expensive. It is not actually very expensive. Right, people, is TV expensive? I'm sure everybody has a TV in the house, right? We don't have TV, right, people?
So we may have it, but it is expensive in Jamaica.
Is it expensive in Jamaica?
Of course.
No, TVs are not expensive in Jamaica.
So you may think.
So what's the cheapest price for a TV? You can get a TV for $20,000. That's not expensive.
Well, I last up for 2 months.
No, you have good TV you can get for $20,000. No. I don't. Anybody else? What do you think about TVs in Jamaica? Are they expensive? Do you think that they're expensive?
They're cheaper, but overseas.
But you're proving my point too, because even if you can buy it overseas, it points to the fact of the whole notion of globalization, where there are no longer physical borders where people can go outside of Jamaica and buy them product and bring it on the plane as them carry on. And I agree with you. I don't buy computers in Jamaica and I don't buy phones in Jamaica. I usually, when I lived in Jamaica, I used to wait until I'm going to Canada or America and buy them and bring them in, because Jamaicans are, well, some of these companies are criminals. Even I have a Mac Pro computer. It's not so expensive in Canada. In Jamaica, it's like almost 200,000. Mac Pro in Canada, you can get a refurbished one for $500, $600, $700. In Jamaica, they're selling them like, I'm like, what the hell? Even phones, I'm like, why are the phones so expensive in Jamaica? But I guess because they're not manufactured here, that's partly why they're so expensive. And in other countries, they can get them on contracts. All right, so types of international business: export, import, trade, foreign direct investment, which is a part of what we're going to talk about, licensing, and franchising is very much the case. KFC and Burger King and those places, they do a lot with franchising, management contracts. So we're going to get into a lot of discussions about this, the types of international business. And what this is really showing you is what I would call the international business process or the chain. So the idea, number one, the idea for the product is developed in what? Singapore, right? Then the concept is approved in America, in Houston, Texas, America. Then where's 3? Then the concept design done is in Singapore. So the concept, the idea is developed here, but the design of the idea is finalized in Singapore, what we call, some people call it a prototype. Then the engineering is designed in Taiwan, where many computer components are made, initially manufactured by a Taiwanese contractor. And then the final assembly in Singapore, Australia, China, and India. So the products made in Australia, China, and India are primarily for those markets. Machines made in Singapore go to all of Southeast Asia. So you see how international businesses are operating, and how the process in the creation of, for example, a computer is done all over the world, depending on most times caused by labor costs, availability of certain resources, and expertise. Is this clear, everybody? No?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so reasons for the growth in international business, and I think we said it earlier, technology. Technology is causing businesses to operate at your fingertips. How many people have an Amazon account? How many people have an Amazon account? Only an Amazon account? Only one person have an Amazon account, everybody?
Yes, sir, we have Amazon account.
Oh, me think so on the band back account, because me I wonder what going. Only must be up with the times, people. You have to buy on Amazon. So you buy on Amazon, how do you get it into the country? Do you go through what they call that place again on Ripon Road? Do you go through that company? I don't remember the name of that company.
Ship me at that, sir.
Yeah, Ship Me. Do you go through Ship Me?
So you know, say only for them they both now.
Yes, a whole lot. A whole lot.
Only for
Other than
them.
Ship Me, there are many others.
Shipwise too.
Yes. Yes, there are so many. So
Reliable couriers.
Reliable couriers, yes. So, and transportation is quicker while costs are lower, which is true, because especially in like North America, transportation is very cheap. So where I live in Canada, when I take the bus from my house, I have to take 2 buses to go to work. The second bus, I'm not charged. Even though you still tap, it's not, they don't charge you. And of course, you can take the train and go so many different places to work. When I went to England, my mother, at the time, she wasn't driving. So she took 2 trains, but you still reach work on time because the train system was very reliable and all of that. Communication also enables control from afar. Very true. People can have virtual meetings, Zoom meetings, Google Meets meetings, all kinds of meetings can happen. And I'm sure what is going to happen now, people, you see all these traveling, going to business meetings all over the world, most companies are going to cut it out. Because they're going to say what? Here what? We have been having these meetings on Zoom. Why should I now go and pay for you to travel to Jamaica or travel to Bermuda or some other country when you can have the meeting on Zoom? Agreed?
Yes, sir.
And I teach my classes in Canada on online as well. So I'm in Jamaica. Until I go back, I'm teaching my classes online and it works perfect. My students don't have a problem with the online thing. I'm sure they probably would want to be in person, but it works because many of them, they actually have work and it saves them money in terms of leaving their household. So liberal government policies on trade and resources, liberalization of cross-border movement. All right, I want to educate you a little bit about when it comes about liberalization. Anybody has ever heard this concept of liberalization? Ever heard the term liberalization? No? All right. Never heard that term, people? Liberalization? All right, so I'm going to give you some history on Jamaica. Should I tell you or should I make you see it for yourself? Let me see if I find it. Liberal philosophy. No. Oh, the other term they use is neoliberalism. Neoliberalism. Anybody has ever heard the person? Right, there it is. Let me see if I can find a nice clipping of it. No, that's too long. Let me see if this tells me.
Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan had an unusual relationship, a special relationship. The joint biographer calls it.
It was closer ideologically and warmer personally than any relationship between any other British.
All right, I'm going to share my screen.
American president.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, so I hope they actually speak to it. Okay.
Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan had an unusual relationship, a special relationship, the joint biographer calls it.
It was closer ideologically and warmer personally than any relationship between any other British Prime Minister and any other American president.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the summit. Thank you for your presidency. Thank you for your testament of belief. And God bless America.
Mrs. Thatcher's longtime press secretary describes the relationship this way.
I think they were political soulmates, and that explains the closeness.
Thatcher and Reagan met years before either of them came to power. They spent hours discussing their shared vision.
It was two people saying, if only we can get there, this is what we will do.
And they did. Imagine a British Prime Minister speaking for an American president.
Margaret Thatcher would say, speaking for both of them, Ron and I think.
Thatcher altered Reagan's sentimental view of Ireland.
He gave her more support in dealing with terrorism in Northern Ireland than any previous American president had given any British Prime Minister.
She convinced Reagan that Mikhail Gorbachev was a Soviet leader they could.
All right, I'm not getting what I want, but let me explain to you. All right, I'm sure you guys know Edward Seago, right? Hello?
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Who is Edward Seago? Who is Edward Seago? I'm listening. And I'm not trying to insult your intelligence. I'm asking a genuine question.
Former Prime Minister.
Former Prime Minister. When was he Prime Minister?
I don't remember the exact year.
Not the year. What period?
In the 2000, sir, I think.
In the what?
No, it's a long time.
In the 80s.
In the 80s.
Thank you very much.
Man.
In the 80s. Lord, this I'm young man here. In the 2000s.
E for effort, sir.
E for effort, my brother. I cheer you on. I so agree. All right. So it is in the 1980s. Does anybody know the thinking or the, let me call it, the philosophy at that time that he embraced? Or what was happening? All right. I don't know that you're going to know, because this is something that you really have to do a lot of
Robin
reading on.
Hood.
Well, I don't know if you want to call it Robin Hood. So at the time, it was called neoliberalism and sometimes called liberalization. So the reason I showed you Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, anybody knows who those two persons are? Ever heard about them before I mentioned them?
One was the former president of the United States.
Right, and Margaret Thatcher is a former prime minister of Britain. They embrace a philosophy of free market capitalism. So, you know, for example, in Jamaica, we say that the PNP is socialist and the JLP is for free market. Come on, people, talk to me. I'm trying to give you some education in terms of Jamaica's political history. So I want you to talk to me. Do you know that that's how people think about, like, JLP, PNP they are socialists, they are for poor people, and PNP, JLP is free market, they're for rich people.
Yes,
Have you
sir.
ever? Right.
Yes,
So
sir.
it's coming from that time. At that point in time, Mr. Siaga joined forces with Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan and opened up Jamaica's economy to what is called free market capitalism. At that point in time, you had a lot of foreign direct investments happening in Jamaica. You have another thing called the Caribbean Basin Initiative, CBI, something that you probably should look up. And this is where now we started getting cheaper TV or getting TVs available. This is where cable started coming in. We started diversifying our media when we're talking about not entertainment report. What was that one called again? Not entertainment report. I don't remember, but it started opening up the economy, right? So that's the whole notion of liberalization, because the moment you open the economy to international businesses, then of course they're going to what? They're going to what? Cause for foreign direct investment. Prior to Mr. Siago, it was Michael Manley and almost everything was state owned. But Mr. Siago had a different view. He embraced what is called liberalization or neoliberalism, where government will move out of the way and allow private businesses to do whatever they want in the marketplace. So that is another reason for the growth of international business, because of what happened in the 1980s between Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, who really kind of set the quote unquote world order of the day. All right, other reasons for the growth of international business: development of institutions that support international trade, for example, the World Trade Organization and the World Bank. Consumer pressure, in other words, people wanted option in the marketplace. All right, people wanted to say, okay, suppose I don't want a Jamaica created, Jamaica made furniture, dresser. Suppose I want one that is from overseas. Increased global competition. In other words, businesses, the marketplace in the international market became far more competitive. Examples of reductions in trade barriers, which is a part of neoliberalism or liberalization. This is something you can actually write on your paper, that neoliberalism or liberalization led to the reduction in trade barriers, because you cannot have international businesses operating with trade barriers. So because of that move, because of that kind of quote unquote world order between of neoliberalism at the time, then of course you now need what? Regulations to govern how international businesses operate. So you had, for example, you had GATT. The shortening for this is GATT, which is General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. You had the World Trade Organization. You had the North American Free Trade Agreement, which is NAFTA. You had the European Union. Many countries started forming regional blocs. You have Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, and you have CARICOM, Caribbean Community and Common Market. I don't know if it really works, but these particular regional blocs are supposed to reduce trade barriers to ensure that international businesses can buy and sell in countries without impediments or without restrictions or without too many restrictions. And they're just showing you the average tariff rates. You know, you don't necessarily need to know the granular details of this. So examples of technological innovation: internet, intranet, and extranet. These are things that came out of that are now impacting international trade. Activities occurring after the production costs. to bypass intermediaries like wholesalers and retailers. Companies can enter global markets, cut post-production costs, and pass savings on to customers. In other words, some of the persons know they don't necessarily need to go to, an wholesaler in Jamaica. They can buy directly from the company, or they can buy from Amazon themselves, all right, or buy from Apple itself. Advancement in technology, and we know that there are so many different advancements in technology. So advances in transportation methods. I know, for example, in Japan, they have a train system that the train does not touch the train line, it levitates. In some countries, they're building transportation or train system under the water or under the sea. I think, which country is it? I think they're trying to build a train system from Russia to Europe. So it's one big train system all leading from parts of Europe all the way into Russia. Again, these things help or bring about, create opportunities for international business. This is just showing you internet usage per 100 people, and this is very old data. It's much more than that. The current US international trade position, don't necessarily need to know the US international trade position. We can get a more recent map to show the trade positions of countries, and more than likely it's going to be the US, China. Even though China is considered a developing country, China is very much a developed country. I've always said that the definition of China as a developing country is very political, but trust me, they are very advanced in international trade. The impact of international business on the United States, I don't know that we need to know it on the United States. You just need to look at the impact of international businesses on. Let's talk about Jamaica. Can you tell me some of the ways international businesses have impacted on Jamaica or on the Caribbean? I am listening.
Sir, Digicel allowed us to afford.
To afford?
Before Digicel, the regular cell phones. It's
Right,
easier
so,
accessible and more affordable now than before.
But you know that Digicel doesn't own phones, right?
I know, but it's true them that we first got that option.
Right. I agree. No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm fully much agreeing with you. But not only that, remember cable and wireless, how much we used to pay per minute to make an international call? Anybody remembers? If you're probably too young. Again, I'm aging myself. But at one point, it was $50 per minute to make an international call. So when you call somebody overseas, you have to just say it very fast, talk very, very fast. And Digicel came in and changed all of that. People can now get credit, put on service. Flow never offered, then Cable and Wireless never offered those things to their customers. So Digicel came in and changed the telecommunication landscape in many ways for the better. For the better. Now they're kind of falling off in terms of customer service, but trust me, they did a tremendous job letting us see that you can get credit. You can pay less for international minutes, less for talking on the phone. You can get service, you can send message, all kinds of things. You have plans. Cable and Wireless before never did any of that. Any other impact of an international business on Jamaica or the Caribbean? What else can you think of? I am listening. Can you think of anything else, people?
Yes, it make the supply chain flow more easier, sir.
All right, so we have better supply chain. In other words, we can get our goods and services. We can get our goods, physical goods on time, or even the service. Anything else? And this, what they're saying about the US actually can refer to Jamaica. Outflows are important in terms of balancing the trade account, but this one is even better. Participation in international business can help firms achieve economies of scale that cannot be achieved in domestic markets. So think about a Grace. Grace is a what? Is a domestic company, but the amount of sales that they have had, or the economy of scales would not happen had they only been operating in Jamaica. They're all over the world now because Jamaicans are all over the world, or Caribbean people are all over the world. And as a result, they're able to reach these different areas. So that's another way. You're talking about employment, but as I said, you have to look at it in terms of good and bad. All right, not going to get into those specific things. Now I get to the whole notion of globalization. Let me ask you this question. If someone were to ask you, how would you define globalization? What would be your definition of globalization? The angel has passed, people. What would be your definition of globalization? Hello? People, you're silent. How would you define the
Like a
globalization?
worldwide integration.
So it'd be a worldwide integration of, what are we integrating worldwide?
Goods, service, people.
Right, so goods, services, people, yes, you're correct. So it's really the removing of borders between and among countries. Right, it's really removing borders, political, cultural, physical, economic borders between and among countries. And it facilitates the movement of capital, of people, and so forth. And I'm sure you guys know that Canada, for example, needs people. And if you're below 30, you actually have an advantage because you get points for being young. All right, so these are just different definitions. So what is globalization? Trend toward greater economic, cultural, political, and technological interdependence among national institutions and economies. And I like the term interdependence. In other words, the world is now a single, this is another definition, where the world is considered a single space. So you're no longer just a Jamaican, but you're a global citizen. And I'm sure many of you are able to talk to your friends and family members all over the world on FaceTime, and you're literally seeing them in front of you. And for this course, we're going to look at the globalization of markets and the globalization of production, which the globalization of markets and the globalization of production can be quite political, especially when you're talking about developed and developing countries. And I'm sure you have heard of discussions about countries that allow, for example, child labor. And this is why right now in the US, I don't remember, there's a report on CNN about President Biden banning a particular product from coming to the US because it was made by children. And in their mind, China is violating international law by allowing children to create these products when they really should be enjoying their youthful, their childhood days. So the merging of distinctively separate national markets into a global marketplace. So falling barriers to cross-border trade have made it easier to sell internationally. We're talking about the banking sector. We're talking about various sectors. Tastes and preferences converge onto a global norm. We're talking about KFC, Burger King. Firms offer standardized products worldwide, creating a world market. We're talking about iPhone, any of those companies that make like MacBook. So it's one MacBook. The MacBook that you have in Jamaica is the same one that exists outside of Jamaica. Continuing difficulties that arise from globalization of markets, significant differences still exist among national markets, country-specific marketing strategies, varied product mix, even the pricing might be different. The pricing might be different because the cost for it in one country might be more or less in another country. And of course, when it talks about country-specific marketing strategies, marketing is about getting people to buy goods and services. So of course, the way it is positioned in Jamaica or the way it is marketed in Jamaica is not necessarily the same way it is done in other countries. And there are times too when you have to tweak the product, like a KFC, especially when it comes down to food. Sometimes you have to tweak the product. Can you imagine KFC in China versus KFC in Jamaica? I'm sure it doesn't taste the same way. It would be a different taste. So the most global markets are not consumer markets. The most global markets are for industrial goods and materials that serve a universal need the world over. Can you think of any example? Industrial goods and materials that serve a universal need the world over. Can you think of any example? Hello?
Sorry, can I repeat the question, please? My internet is in and out.
The most global markets are for industrial goods and materials that serve a universal need. Can you think of any example? No example? Hello? No example? Can you think of something that the world trades, that most countries buy, that they... Oil, thank you. Oil is an example. Oil is a very good example. And usually when it goes up around the world, it goes up. So if the producers raise the price, it goes up around the world. If the producers lower the cost, it goes, sometimes it goes down, but not in Jamaica. Prices always go up in Jamaica when it comes down to oil. And if it goes down, it's by a cent. It goes up by $1, but never goes down by $1. They are not a set of criminals. Well, not for the recording. Can't say those things. Next thing I'm sued. All right, globalization of production. No, we're talking about actually producing the good and or the service. So refers to sourcing of goods and services from locations around the world to take advantage of differences in terms of cost or quality of the factors of production. What's the coffee international business that is in Jamaica that makes coffee? Hello? It's in New Kingston, people. I'm sure you guys have been in New Kingston.
Oh, Starbucks.
Starbucks, right. Starbucks. So Starbucks would, for example, they're going to have to employ local persons to work, right, in their stores, right, across Jamaica. And they would have to, sometimes well, probably not Starbucks because they don't necessarily need land, but some companies might need land. And of course, there's also going to be capital because you have to invest. Historically, this has been primarily confined to manufacturing enterprises. Increasingly, companies are taking advantage of modern communications technology, particularly the internet, to outsource service activities to low-cost producers in other countries. And this goes back to, this example goes back to, no, not that way, to this that we were looking at before. Let me just bring it back up. This, not this, right? So if you look, for example, in terms of production, this again is the example where it is produced. Sometimes different parts are produced in different parts of the world. It would be interesting for you to find out where the parts of the iPhone are produced. Because you'll find that sometimes not all the parts are produced in any one country. Even Donald Trump, who always complains about, who loves to say America first, He has a tie, a tie, let's call it a tie brand, and that brand, that the ties are made in China. As much as we hear him cuss China and all of that, his ties are made in China, in part because of cheap labor. It's cheaper to produce those ties in China. Everybody's understanding so far? Just want to, are you guys understanding what the class so far, the information? It might be a little bit too much to consume, but are you understanding?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. And you will find that this course requires you to do, if I were you, I'd be watching my CNN, you know, international news, because a lot of those discussions will happen there, especially international business news. I would read the international business section of the Glean and the Observer, because you get a lot of conversations that are happening there as well. We said that already. We said that already. All right, so outsourcing of productive activities to different suppliers results in the creation of products that are global in nature. Do you know that even Grace, do you know the canned coconut water that is made by Grace?
Milk, sir, not water.
Coconut water.
In can?
Yes.
Yes, sir. A white can.
Oh.
Yes. Where is it? Do you know where it is actually produced?
I don't remember. I don't think it's Jamaica though.
It's not Jamaica. So even Grace outsourcing some of its productive activities because it might be cheaper to make it elsewhere. Sometimes Jamaica doesn't have the technology and they don't want to spend too much money doing that in Jamaica when they could pay less for that elsewhere. So the impediments to the globalization of production include formal and informal barriers to trade. Sometimes businesses in Jamaica, the red tape in Jamaica cause businesses to not come or not to operate in Jamaica. There was a discussion some years ago about a filmmaker who was making a movie about Jamaica and wanted to do it in Jamaica and ended up doing it in Trinidad. Anybody heard that discussion?
I'm not aware of that one, sir.
Yes, I was actually teaching a course at UA called Cultural and Creative Industries at the time, and it was one of the things that I'd introduced the students to. And the company complained that Jamaica has too many red tapes. When they go to the government was giving them this one long list of this and that, and all kinds of stuff. The company say, here what? Trinidad has a far more welcoming business environment. I'm going to Trinidad. And they went to Trinidad and made a film about Jamaica in Trinidad because Jamaica was being too difficult in terms of red tape. All right, you might have barriers to foreign direct investments, transportation costs. It might be too expensive for transportation. Issues associated with economic risk because the country itself might be, think about Haiti now. And I'm not beating up on Haiti, but no, it's kind of it's like a failed state. So companies might say, boy, I'm not going to get the returns on my investment if I go there. Issues related to political risk. It could be, for example, that the country is communist. I'm not sure if you've ever heard persons criticizing the NBA. Well, Republicans in America criticize, like LeBron James, saying that they complain about systemic racism in America, but they don't complain about communism in China. I'm not sure if you know that basketball is very big in China. You guys know that, right?
No, sir, just to make you know.
Yeah, man, basketball. This is why even in North Korea, that people don't really go. Who has been to North Korea as a basketballer?
Dennis Rodman.
Yes, because it's very big in that country. It's very, very big in those countries. Basketball is very, very, very big. So it could be political risk where some companies might say, here what, I'm not going to go to these countries because I don't want to be associated with communism, or I don't want to be associated with certain things. All right, so they're not going to go to the country and invest because they don't want any kind of, negative repercussions on their company. Benefits of globalization. So globalization of markets reduces marketing costs, new market opportunities. There's always new and levels income stream, globalization of production, access low cost labor, which sometimes it's a benefit for the company, but it can be a negative for the host country, because this is why call centers in Jamaica, they employ a whole range of Jamaicans, but I'm not sure if you know that they're actually paying them less than that which they would pay in, for example, in North America. So in North America, if they had to pay $20 per hour, in Jamaica, they're paying 10.
Well, that's the reason why most call centers are outside of the US.
Right. A lot of them are outside of the US because
cheap labor.
Cheap labor, right. Acquire technical expertise, that's true, and obtain production inputs. When you get your papers, people, and we're going to have what are called tutorials, we're going to choose your question and discuss. All you need to do is to find examples of these things. We're going to start our tutorials next week. So the first question will be a general question for all of us to answer. And then after that, you're going to choose your individual questions and answer, and you're going to be given a grade. I'm going to show you how to structure your paper, because this course requires a lot of reading, in the sense that you want to ensure that the information that you're producing is very precise and accurate. And as I said, all you need are examples. So you just say, for example, in Cuba, or for example, in the Caribbean, when Digicel came in and reduced the cost of calls per minute and whatever. That's all you need to do in terms of support. Measuring globalization, political engagement, membership and involvement in international organizations. This is why you have what I call global organizations such as the World Health Organization. They are now involved in the whole discussion about the origins of COVID and trying to find and carry out an investigation into China. You have UNESCO, you have World Bank, you have the International Monetary Fund, you have, what else am I thinking about? There are so many of them. Technological connectivity, how many users have access to internet? And in Jamaica, we actually have a lot of persons. I don't remember the exact data from my head. When I was teaching digital marketing last semester, I showed them the information, a study that was done by Hootsuite that showed you the number of Jamaicans that had internet per square mile. And a lot of Jamaicans have internet. A whole host of Jamaicans have internet, and this is in part due to globalization. All right, companies are coming in and they say that, here what, people need connectivity in order to access our services. So this is why you see Flow now, they're carrying out their campaign about their broadband technology, and that is you don't have connectivity issue. Digicel is doing the same thing, because it makes no sense you're trying to sell credit to persons who don't have access to internet. Doesn't make sense. Personal contact, economic integration, and I just kind of spoke about some of that. The trade agreements that are formed, foreign direct investments, portfolio capital flows, and investment income. You have a lot of investment coming into the country. Oh yes, anybody remember the discussion about where the opposition accused the government of giving, I think it's China Harbor, the contract for building the highway. I think it's in Montego Bay. Anybody remembers that news report? Hello? Why are they not answering me?
Sir, please repeat that.
Do you remember the discussion? The opposition accuses the Homeless Administration of not going to tender and giving the contract to build a highway to China. I think it's China Harbor.
I vaguely recall the discussion.
Let me see if I can find the actual thing. PNP accuses Homeless Administration of giving contract to Chinese. It was in the Gleaner. All right, so here it is. Right there, I think I found it. Okay. All right, so let me stop here and I'm going to share the article. Share my screen where you can see the article. So insisting that the government was on a bad legal footing and accusing the Homeless Administration of selling out the country as it sought to have China Harbor Engineering Company build the Montego Bay Perimeter Road project, opposition leader Mark Golding said the order should be withdrawn. The opposition leader argued that for the order to have been valid, the Montego Bay Perimeter Road project should have been approved by Cabinet and Parliament as a national development project. Golding said he made checks and no such approval was given by Parliament. Quote, the order itself, which is a signed order seeking to be affirmatively approved by this House and the Senate, doesn't provide any approval of the project as a national project, development project, end quote. Golding contended that the role of the order instead is to exempt the project from the provisions of the Public Procurement Act. The order also seeks to tie China Harbor engineering company to wage rates agreed by the Joint Industrial Council and impose minimum labor quotas of 90% and 50% for unskilled and technical local workers, respectively. Quote, the order is bad on its face and should be withdrawn because it has not been approved by Parliament, end quote, Golding charge. Construction of the Montego Bay Perimeter Road project is expected to begin by late 2020. Unlike other major road projects before it, taxpayers will be paying for its construction upfront. The bypass consists of 2 legs and it goes on and it goes on and it goes on. So this is an actual conversation about an international business operating in Jamaica and sometimes being dragged into discussions, into political discussions between governments and their oppositions. All right, so I want for you, again, people to pay attention to these kinds of discussions because I might just drop it on your mid-semester somewhere along the line, all right? Top 20 global nations, of course, this is dated. You can find more current information on that. The globalization debate, of course, some persons are for globalization, some persons are against globalization. They are having all kinds of disputes. What I want, I'm going to, as a class activity, I'm going to give you about 10 minutes or so. I'm going to put you in 2 groups. I want one side, you're going to argue for, you're going to give me arguments for globalization, and I want the other side to give me arguments against globalization, all right? With specific examples. So I want 2 groups. And room 1, Jerome, Maurice, Rachel, Wayne. Room 2, Christopher, Ramon, Shanique. Does everybody understand? Arguments for and against globalization. You can use, if you can find any video clipping or anything, you can do that. I'm giving everybody 15 minutes to work together as a group and then 5 minutes for presentation. Talk to me if you understand.
Hold on, sir. Step from the class here a minute.
So I'm saying I'm putting in 2 groups, and one group, room 1, you're going to give me arguments for globalization, and room 2, you're going to give me arguments against globalization. And you're going to use specific examples. When I say specific, I mean choosing examples from all over the world. All right, not just Jamaica.
All right.
Okay, so 15 minutes beginning, so it's now 8:22. Please go into the breakout room. Christopher, Rachel, and Wayne, you're not, I hope, yes, go into the breakout room. Rachel, are you there?
Sir, how you join back the room?
Which room were you in?
Two.
Okay, you can go back in now. All right. Let's hear from room one. Jerome, Maurice, Rachel, and Wayne. Go ahead. Room one. Go ahead. Room one. Jerome, Maurice, Rachel, Wayne.
Yes, sir.
All right, sir. So, Jerome, go on first.
All right. So we were four. We had a couple pointers. One of them being outsourcing.
So first of all, tell us your position. What is your position?
Oh.
So what are you looking at? Just tell us what you're looking at.
Hold on, let's see. I have to word this from.
All right, somebody can help him and word it. Nothing is wrong. Somebody in the group can help him.
So we are room one and we are for globalization.
So in other words, you're looking at the advantages of globalization.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Let's hear what are some of the advantages with the examples.
All right, so one of the advantages would be outsourcing for better production costs.
For better production costs. There's no such word as costs. Costs.
Costs. All right,
right.
Sir. Thanks for the correction. All right, so one example of this would be, for example, goods in a hospital inventory. It would, instead of buying these goods locally, we can go ahead and buy them from the main supplier, which would cost less than buying them locally.
Okay, all right.
A next advantage would be it increases capital for some countries. For example, Jamaica exporting aluminum. It increases our capital in that aspect of things.
So I think they call it the gross national product. Because
Yes,
it is a gross. So in other words, try to learn the language of the course.
Gross national product.
Right. So gross domestic products are all the goods and services that are produced in a country locally in a year. But the gross national products is the GDP plus all the goods that are also sold outside of the country in a year. And that would be a perfect example of us selling aluminum in to other countries. All right,
Yes.
continue.
It helps to ease the supply chain and logistics. So shipping becomes easier. Persons can now shop online and ship to Jamaica at a cost, reasonable cost.
I would say at an affordable cost.
Yeah, affordable. Yes. I don't know if there were any more pointers. We were aiming for 3, I think.
All right, for 3. Yes. All right, that's fair enough. 3 points is always good for an essay. Room 2, Christopher and Shanique. I'm only seeing 2 of you. Go ahead.
Sir, it caused
So tell us your position first. You have to tell us your position.
disadvantages against globalization.
So disadvantages of globalization, not against. Disadvantages of globalization.
It caused unequal economic growth.
It
causes.
For example, hold on. For example.
For example, sorry, them have to help me. Christopher, can you explain that for me?
Repeat that one.
Unequal economic growth.
So basically what's that saying is that globalization allow rich country to piggyback on the poor country. So they drain the national resources of the poor country for themselves. So for example, like America they might dig in an oil business or Saudi. So they might try to drain Saudi oil resource because America have a reserve oil reservoir, but yet them still are digging out the east for them oil.
All right, be careful of that. All right, be careful of those made up examples though. In my course, if you talk about something that is made up and I know it not to be true, I'm going to mark it down. All right, so it's better you get the facts. So be careful of saying America is quote unquote digging in Saudi oil because America doesn't control oils from Saudi Arabia. That's the first thing. All right, so be careful. I know what you're trying to say, but in the real world, when you're writing a paper for me, ensure that the information that you're sharing is accurate. In other words, these are factual examples, not made up examples. For the purposes of what you're doing, no, that's okay. But in terms of a paper, you have to get specific examples, right, Sir Johnson?
Roger.
What do you mean by Roger?
Okay.
Yes, be careful. Yeah, this is all right, Mr. Johnson.
Sir.
Yes.
All right, you say no, my job, sir, then explain to it.
No, what he's saying, all right. So he's getting to the point that there is an unequal, the globalization affects developing countries different from what affects developed countries. So if you're using the example of America, you will look, you can think about when it comes on, he was talking about oil, that America goes into Saudi Arabia and gets their oil and it's a disadvantage to Saudi Arabia and all of that, which is actually not true because in Saudi Arabia, for example, because they have an oil reserve, the persons there, people there don't pay taxes. So the cost of living is very affordable. They actually live a very high lifestyle. So I think it's the wrong country to choose in terms of oil.
Venezuela, sir?
Are you making up Venezuela or do you know specific information about?
No, I'm asking like how American defending Venezuela affairs and could I use that?
But remember, in the context of what? We are talking about globalization. So what specifically about America interfering in Venezuela is indicating or is an example of a disadvantage of globalization. So remember, your thesis is that globalization produces globalization has several disadvantages. One, you're saying, what was the point you made, Shanique?
Pardon?
Repeat the first point you made about the disadvantage of globalization.
Sorry, him is not me.
No, the topic sentence. You made the point and he was giving the example. What was the point you made?
Unequal economic growth.
Right, and that's a very, very strong point about unequal economic growth, because what happens is that many times when these countries, for example, even come, let us say they invest in Jamaica, they want very long tax holidays. In other words, they will not pay tax for the next 10 years because they're saying to these countries, here what, I'm coming in, I'm going to employ persons, I'm going to bring new technology, I'm bringing capital, give me some tax break. Give me a tax break. But what really happens is that many times after 10 years, they leave or they change ownership. Think about JPS. JPS probably could not operate in America. They would have sued them long time. But they're ripping us off. It's actually owned by an international business. So we are kind of left to fend for ourselves. Another thing too, and I think, I don't remember if it was said about the resources. They come into your country, they use your resources, deplete your resources. And what happens is that your country is at a loss, but they're developing. Because when the profits are made in the host country, they send the profits back to what? Their home countries. Even in the tourism sector, when you hear the minister announcing so many billions of dollars being made from tourism, and you say, so where the money there? Everybody's asked, so where is that money? Where is that money going? Because a lot of the money is sent back overseas. The money is actually not spent in Jamaica. Understand? But anyway, Shani, give me your other point. What's the other disadvantage? Room 1 gave me 3, so that's 1 of 2. Give me 2 others.
The causes of job displacement.
All right, for example.
Christopher or Ramon.
Well, I'm not seeing, is Ramon in here?
Sir, we actually had a video that we wanted to play,
So then why not play on the video, man? Yes, of course. Play your video.
All right, cool. Seeing it?
Yes, we are seeing the screen, but we're not hearing. Did you turn on the sound on Zoom? So stop sharing.
Hear it now?
Yes, right. Yeah, but it sounds like you're playing it through something else. Is it that low?
No, I'm not.
Can you turn up the volume? All right, play now for me.
Inequality. People lose jobs through outsourcing and the increased migration of foreign workers. Globalization also increases the roster of competitive companies.
Can you post the link in the chat? Because we're not hearing this thing. I don't think it's that low.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think this video is that low. Post the link in the chat and I'll play. Stop sharing and I'll play it for you.
All right, cool.
So post it in the chat, I'll copy and then I'll play.
No problem.
All right, so here it is. I'm going to
Good grammar and spelling are important, but if you want to write essays that inspire.
Globalization often arrives with an unpleasant side effect: increasing inequality. People lose jobs through outsourcing and the increased migration of foreign workers. Globalization also increases the roster of competitive companies, and when they duke it out, only the strongest companies with the best technology survive. As a result, the world's wealth increasingly concentrates at the top. Oxfam reports that in 2011, 388 people controlled more money than the poorest half of the world's population. Just 5 years later, that wealth had concentrated into the hands of only 62 people. This year, Oxfam estimates that just 8 super rich people have more money than all the money owned by the poorest half of the entire world's population. This problem of inequality is real. Movements like Occupy Wall Street and Fighting Inequality Alliance express frustration and strategize solutions. They argue that a large, secure middle class is the backbone of a strong and growing economy. But others argue that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that people are more likely to ignore these inequalities if they can see their own incomes rising. However, evidence suggests that overall, the tide is no longer lifting all boats. In advanced economies like the United States, Western Europe, and Japan, a general increase in wealth among the middle class is becoming less common. In a study of 25 of the world's most advanced economies, the McKinsey Global Institute found that almost 70% of households have experienced flat or falling incomes in the last decade. This is quite a change from the 1950s through the 90s, when most children could expect to make higher incomes than their parents. Many of those who sense this lack of progress and opportunity for their children have turned their frustration on the very idea of globalization and expressed negative opinions about free trade and open immigration policies. Sensitive to these negative voter opinions, politicians turn inward to help ensure jobs don't leave the country. They lock down borders, decrease the number of work visas, and punish companies for not using local labor. Unfortunately, this solution only makes things worse. History has repeatedly shown that protectionism leads to slower overall growth and decreases the competitiveness of nations engaged in such policies. For example, the Smoot-Hawley tariff of 1930 increased tariffs on foreign goods from less than 20% to nearly 60%. The tariffs worked. Imports to the United States fell by over 60%. Buying foreign products became too expensive, so people had to buy American. This seemed like a great idea at first, but in retaliation, other countries raised their own tariffs as well, and a global trade war began. The world GDP dropped 14%, and the trade wars worsened an already depressed global economy. These sentiments and actions sound hauntingly familiar today. So rather than follow this same path of blocking trade and banning immigration, thereby slowing growth, advanced economies like the US might be better served by finding ways to address the problem of extreme wealth inequality and encourage reasonable sharing in the global marketplace. To do that, companies and governments must work together to improve their competitiveness and make the world more, not less, global. This needs to be done in a way that will help transition and retrain workers who are being displaced, nudging them to areas of growth, which in the U.S. include sectors such as healthcare, information technology, automobiles, energy, farming, education, and financial services. To help workers transition to better jobs, governments and companies may focus on 3 initiatives. The first is to revive growth through increased innovation. The second is to improve transitions from education to employment. And the third is to adjust taxes, raising disposable incomes for low and middle income households.
Ready for a more comfortable...
All right, talk to us. Talk to us about the video now. We saw a lot, consumed a lot, so talk to us. Yes, Ramon, you told me to play. I played, so now you need to talk. Hello? Shanique, Ramon, could you guys just talk to us about what we just listened to?
Sorry, sir, my system froze. Yeah, well, it spoke about the impact of globalization on the nations that don't take part in it, or that actually take part in it and have and come
I
up
don't.
with tariffs. I'm sorry.
I don't know that there's a country that doesn't participate in globalization. I can't think of one that doesn't.
Well, I corrected myself. The nations that actually take part in it.
No, but when you say the nations that actually take part, it suggests that there are countries that don't take part in it. Right. So it implies that. But you're correct in terms of, especially, and the poignant point in the video is the level of wealth that is concentrated among 8 people versus half of the world's population. And this is why you find even movements such as Black Lives Matter. It's not just even about the treatment of Black people, but it's also about equity and equality, people having access to wealth and the ability to create wealth. Even in Jamaica, Jamaica is considered a poor country, but have you guys noticed the number of apartment complexes that are being built across the city?
Yes, sir.
And it's becoming a problem because what they're developing is a concrete jungle. One is being built right next door to my complex where I am now. And if you drive past Excelsior, go into, for example, New Kingston, there are so many different complexes. When you pass Stadium, when you go, for example, up off Constant Spring Road, off Red Hills Road, there's so many. And I'm like, first of all, where people get money from for a build complex? 2, who are going to buy these what I call matches box because you're paying $20 million, only a bed that can hold in the room. Clearly money is in the country, and this is another way of how international businesses and international investors come into a country and negatively impact, changing, for example, or forcing governments to change their policies or to ignore their policies, and causing all kinds of displacements for people. So it does have its pros and its cons. But let us do a recap before we go. What are some of the things we learned today? And I do remember the homework I asked you to find a song that talks about globalization, a reggae or dancehall song. Did anybody find a song that speaks about globalization or internationalization? I remember that I gave you that as homework. Anybody found a song? Reggae or dancehall? I think not.
I didn't find a song. I was waiting. I was sure to find it.
Okay, but Chronix has several songs that speak to it. You can listen to Chronix. Many of the reggae artists themselves have a lot of songs that speak. They might not say the word globalization, but the description of what they're talking about speaks to internationalization and all of that. All right, so recap, what are some of the things we learned today?
What is globalization?
Yes, what is globalization?
And its impacts.
Yes.
And the overall. Yeah.
So impact on nation states.
Yeah, nation states.
Yes. Anything else?
Advantage and disadvantages.
Yes, we spoke about the advantages and disadvantages of globalization. Anything else?
Gross national product.
We spoke about gross national product. Yes, and it was talking about exporting of capital and stuff like that. All right, guys. So I'll see you on Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Try to be early for class, and please try and find a song that speaks to globalization or anything relating to international business. And on Wednesday too, I will speak a little bit more about the tutorials and how we will do the presentations. All right. Have a good evening. Enjoy
you too.
Rest of the week. Be safe until I see you again on Wednesday.
Sir, this course published on Canvas.
No, you wouldn't find it on Canvas. It's supposed to be on Moodle. They haven't published it yet. Put it on Moodle. I actually just sent an email while you guys were doing your class activity to one of the persons because I'm not seeing it there. I see I see principles of marketing, but it is not there yet. And I actually sent an email asking about it. So I'm hoping by Wednesday it should be there.
So this is a CJ course.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Okay. All right.